Hey, what's up? Yeah. So we're having a little bit of fun today. We're gonna do something a little bit different. Hope you all enjoy. What do you guys think? So far, so good. This should be right about there. Okay. Just having a little bit of fun, guys. So we're gonna do the book review first, and then we'll do the videos. Let me see what we're gonna watch today. Also, I mistakenly took my computer to Best Buy for an upgrade, and now it has a few issues. But yeah, we'll deal with that later. Let me put this over here for now. I'll figure that out. Here's my watch later. There we go. Let's see. We're probably going to spend some time today with Christ Defender. There's a few things that I want to watch together. But let's start off with some books, okay? Um, what do you guys think of this? Does that look cool? Does it look silly? We can also put video games back here, which I'll figure that out at some point. So we can either put video games in this small screen here, or we can put video games on the bigger screen. We might do that later just to play around. But I wanted to start off with mini book reviews. Let's go over some stuff. A book haul, actually. I should have called it mini book haul, not mini book review. So I got. Oh, it's gonna keep doing that. I got this one right here. I have some steel Wing Chun rings, so I'm hoping this actually works. I know most people in the UFC who try Wing Chun get beat up, but I'm hoping it's going to be cool. All right, let's go to the next book that I bought recently, The Outsiders. If you haven't read The Outsiders, this is one of my favorite books of all time. I know that's going to keep annoying everybody, but I haven't figured out what's making that noise since I got my computer back. It's my favorite book of all time. One of my favorite books of all time. This one is actually an older book that I've had, but we found it in the back. Haven't read it in a long time. I'm going to check out what it says about Michael from Tan Publishing. Yeah. Next, I've been wanting this book forever. It's Icons and Saints of the Eastern and Orthodox Church. I've had this on my wish list for at least 5 years, so I finally got it. Very cool. And then a Spanish language book that I might have shown on here before. I'm trying to work on my Spanish, so hopefully that will work. All right. Now for the Kip Davises in the room. All right. Check it out. So I got this one. I don't know how to pronounce that name. This is the first of three. I thought I had a fourth one. I actually thought I bought the Oxford Modern Hebrew dictionary, but apparently I did not. What's doing that? I have no idea what's doing that. Yeah. And I got The Holiday. So, and I got it's a Driver? Yeah. Driver Briggs. So, I will start learning Hebrew soon, people. I need to learn Chinese and Spanish first, but apparently I'm going to learn Hebrew. Even though it's not a high priority, it's something I want to do. And if it's something that I want to do, it means I'm going to do it well, as opposed to the things I don't want to do that I should do. Okay. All right. Also, you might hear the super fan going on with my little setup here. All right. Let's go to a video. Let's try this out. Okay. And then we'll probably end with like a video game or something. So we'll start off with Dan. Then we're going to go to Patrick Coffin. We might do a little bit of Cara Mia, which used to be this cute little witch, but she changed her name recently. We might touch a little bit on Capturing Christianity. And then we'll end with Christ Defender. And then from there, maybe try out a video game on both rigs. Okay? I got a little dual PC setup going on right now. Let me know if there's an echo.
When people on the internet assert that there are 0 contradictions in the Bible, they're not asserting something they know to be a fact. What they're doing is performing belief that it's possible that there are no contradictions in the Bible. They've just never thought critically about what they're doing. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan.
I disagree with Dan's statement here, but I'll tell you why later, because it's more nuanced than what most people enjoy. But let's hear a little bit about him.
Scholar of the Bible and religion. And the first reason that they're just performing belief is because the notion that there are 0 contradictions in the Bible is a dogma. And
so I would argue that there are 0 meaningful contradictions. Not that there are no, let's call it factual contradictions, if you will. Yeah, the different storytellers, different authors, different, I would even say even different redactors and editors disagree on events and order of events. But I would say that that has very little to do with meaning. So there's very little contradiction in meaning or in gist or in point. Now that's my opinion. And for a long time I thought it was just my opinion until I heard Jimmy Akin explain this to both Bart Ehrman and to James White. So I think since I'm in the company of Jimmy Akin on this one, and even though me and Jimmy Akin have disagreed on other things, I think I'm pretty safe here to say when they say there's no contradiction, we mean no contradiction in the same way in a conversation when you're 2 or 3 people are telling a story and what they're saying doesn't quite line up. That's what we mean by no contradiction. And let me hide one of my gothy figures just because I don't want to scandalize anyone with my figurines that I've had for over 20 years. Okay, let's keep going.
it is something that functions as costly signaling. It's a way to put on display to others that you are willing to endorse the credences it is necessary to endorse in order to have good standing within the social identities that are important to them. And they put it on display in public in order to incur increased costs, to invite increased scrutiny, in order to show that they're willing to amplify the costs of endorsing that credence, precisely because it's such an extraordinary claim. Just like saying the Earth is only 6,000 years old, or all humanity descended from 8 people who survived a global flood around.
So someone else made this criticism to Dan recently, so I'm not going to sound very original, but I don't do this every night anymore, so I'm not up to date. I'm a little bit behind. Which is Dan's criticizing the worst version of these arguments. He's not criticizing the consensus argument on the religious side. So he's making religious people sound incredibly ignorant and incredibly naive, when only very few extremists and fundamentalists hold to ultra-literalist ideas. And that's what he's attacking, is the ultra-literalist ideas, not the literalist. I don't even agree with the literalist, and the literalists are more nuanced than the ultra-literalist positions that Dan McClellan is attacking. And I get it. These people exist. I was I'm going to word this carefully. I was dealing with some people, and it was after hours, and we were talking about general things, not even about religion. The topic of evolution came up, and when I talked about how I believe in evolution, how my buddy who was with me believed in evolution, one person in the group that we were talking to freaked out. He got super offended and said, "You believe we came from fish?" And they said, "Well, you're not willing to hear my opinion, and we haven't." This person hadn't even said an opinion. Like, you're not willing to hear my opinion, so therefore, I think we should just stop the conversation and we shouldn't talk anymore. They were that offended and that defensive because they didn't have a way to defend against evolution. And now these are biblical literalists, and they were fundamentalists, and they believe God created everything, and they don't have any room for theistic evolution or for evolution of any kind. So, yeah, these people exist. I'm not denying that, but that's not the majority of Christian belief. That's not the consensus in Christian belief. And it's definitely not the creedal belief or the apostolic faith as most Christians know it: Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant. So, Dan's attacking a very extreme, very far on the edge belief of Christianity.
4,000 years ago. These invite increased scrutiny and criticism from the public, and that is a way to incur costs in a public way that can be seen by other members of the social identities that are important to you and thereby enhance your standing. So the main reason that they're not asserting something they know to be a fact is because it's not a fact, it's just a credence that they have decided to accept and assert in order to curate their social standing within the social identities that are important to them. And you can be upset about it all you want, but it is identity politics all the way down. And the other reason they're not asserting something they know to be a fact is because virtually none of the people who make that assertion have competently interrogated all the nooks and crannies of the arguments regarding contradictions in the Bible.
And that's a slightly too high of a standard. I want to be very clear. Saying that they haven't studied or understood the Bible or read the Bible, most of these people do nothing but study the Bible. So that's already an untrue statement anyway. But taking it to the extreme of they haven't gone to every nook and cranny. Most scholars haven't gone through every nook and cranny. Joe Heschmeyer, who I love, makes blanket statements that aren't correct. Not because the gist isn't right, but because when you go beyond the general understanding, it turns out that what he's basing his foundation on is a misunderstanding of the original intent of whatever author or quote he's mining. So, yeah, I get it. It's frustrating when that happens. But that doesn't mean that they haven't studied, and that doesn't even mean that they're not educated in that area, just because they don't agree with you or with the consensus.
Maybe they've Googled an awful lot of them and then just blithely accepted whatever apologetics they've come.
And also saying that Google is not a way to do research is a lie. If you dealt with modern academia, there's a lot of Google, there's a lot of AI. There just is. And to pretend that there isn't is not woefully naive, but it's dishonest. And I'm not calling Dan dishonest here. I'm saying his sweeping generalization is dishonest because it assumes too much. It assumes too much.
Across, but very, very few people have actually critically interrogated the claimed contradictions in the Bible. And even those who have are not convinced that it is a fact that there are zero contradictions in the Bible. Because when you get into the nitty-gritty of the claimed contradictions, the data do not support the conclusion.
So, I'm afraid he's wrong again. Not only do people like Gavin Ortlund and Mike Winger do this on a daily basis. I'm using those two because they're Protestants and not Catholics, but there's also very good Catholic and Orthodox who do this every day, who defend the fact there's no contradictions, only apparent contradictions. And they have the correct data set. So, no. This is a level of ignorance that in his fourth, fifth year on the internet, Dan should no longer be engaging in. I understand if he's brand new to the internet and he's brand new to Christian apologetics and he's like, this is crap. Look at this. Look at what they're saying. This is completely untrue. I can show you where John says one thing and Mark says another. Fine. First year anti-apologist. Take it as it is. But as someone who's been doing anti-apologetics for a while and who has been doing internet religion stuff for a long time now, this is a level of naivete that looks bad on Dan because Dan knows better. Dan has argued against Mike Jones. Dan has argued against, I can't think of his name right now, William Lane Craig. He's argued against these points. So to just assume or to even just to say as a jab that these are unstudied or unlearned people is wrong.
That these things don't contradict. Whether you're talking about the contradictory accounts of Judas's death, or the contradictory accounts of how many animals Jesus was riding into Jerusalem, or the contradictory.
And again, there are not just apologetics, but there are scholarly articles about how to reconcile these things. And if you want to say all reconcilement is contradiction, then you're just not living in reality. If you have 5 people watching the same scene and none of them are lying and all of them are telling the truth, their stories are going to differ and contradict each other. And those apparent contradictions have to be ironed out. And you have to figure out what they're actually talking about or what they're trying to say. And that's if everyone's telling the truth. And that it's only a single source per accounting. Where the Bible, each book is multiple authors with multiple redactors and different agendas, serving different versions of the narrative. That it's...
Would you like me to use ChatGPT to answer that?
No, I want you to turn off. Why did you even turn on? I don't know why it's doing that. Ever since I got the update with the AI, it's really annoying. It just starts talking in the middle of anything. Damn, turning it off. Squish, stop. Shh. Come here or be quiet. I'm gonna close the door. I'll kick you out of the room. Come here. Come here. Come on. Okay, be quiet. So I was gonna set up this camera as a cat cam, so you could see her. But then I changed my mind midway through, right before I was going to record, actually. And so I brought it up here. But I was going to put it over here so you could actually watch her while she's napping. Okay, let's continue.
Accounts of Jesus' birth, or the contradictory accounts of the creation of the universe, or of Ahaziah's death, or of who it was who killed Goliath, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam, or any one of a number of other contradictions.
Again, not contradictions. Not contradictions. I get it. I get why you call it contradictions. But your language in religion is much broader than this. I feel like you're getting stuck in the Bible and losing the religion that surrounds it. I think a much better take on this is if you watch Religion for Breakfast. Religion for Breakfast has a great explanation on how to understand what reconciliation is and how Christians and other religious groups go about it. Because he doesn't just concentrate on Christianity, although that's the majority of his stuff. That's a good way to understand what Dan is trying to critique, but he's doing a poor job of it because he's letting his ideology and his dislike of certain styles of apologetics blind him to what the apologetics is trying to do. And he's assuming the worst in bad faith. And that's why in my review of his book, I call this a bad faith.
Down into debating the nature of these contradictions, the people claiming they're not contradictions are always going to retreat to the notion that it's not impossible to harmonize the two.
And it's not impossible. And that's the point. And that's all they need. All they need is 1%. A 1% chance it's true, and that's enough. You don't have to like that then, but that is what they're doing. You calling it out doesn't change that that's the name of the game.
Two different accounts. Notice that is a tacit admission.
If I say all football is trying to get a ball into another zone, and you're not even really running 100 yards. You're always starting off at a different position that's already in field, so you're never really doing 100 yards. So football is a lie. No, that's the game that's being played. Now, you could say football is a game that shouldn't be played because it's dangerous and because of all, whatever else. Fine, that's your argument. Say apologetics is bad. That's the game that I play. The game that I play is apologetics is bad. It's not good. Whatever it was originally meant to be, it is not doing, and it's corrupting a lot of people. And it's convincing people of, let's call it, religious ideas that are not actually part of any religious group. These are individual people with bad ideas who are spreading it to other people and making them believe that it's obligatory to be part of these larger communities to believe these niche ideas. That's very different complaint than, the whole world is bad. And that's Dan sometimes comes off apocalyptic and I would say cynical and maybe even nihilistic in his view of belief. Not all belief is a lie. Not all faith is bad.
That it is not the most likely explanation for the two different accounts.
And not all dogma is wrong.
I'm not saying the data demonstrate this is what's most likely. It's not even usually saying this is plausible. What it's most often doing is saying you can't prove it's impossible, therefore I have this tiny little sliver of not impossible, and that's...
But here's the problem, Dan. It doesn't matter if it was impossible, because through God all things are possible. And that's not just Christianity. That's all these other religions that I have behind me. So what's your game now? Sweetheart, I'm trying to talk. So this is not a good argument against religion. Sweetheart, I really am going to kick you out if you don't calm down and take a nap.
Where I'm going to be comfortable, which is, again, a tacit admission that this is not the best explanation. So they're not convinced.
No one's talking about the best explanation. We're talking about truth. The claim is that it's the true explanation, not the most likely, not the most possible, not even the most unparadoxical. See Taoism. So, no, this is not a good argument against religion, our faith, our dogma. Like, maybe to your scholarly friends, it's a good argument because, yeah, it doesn't hold up to secular scholarly scrutiny. But most of the people that you and I both argue against are not arguing for secular scholarly scrutiny. In fact, they hate secular scholarly scrutiny, and they don't like people like me, and they definitely don't like people like you, only because we want to deal in the world of facts.
It's a fact. They're not convinced it's the best explanation or the most likely explanation. They're convinced
You're
it's
shedding
not
hair
impossible.
right on me, and you're making me.
And when you say, I am convinced it's not impossible
I'm kicking you
that
out.
the Bible has zero contradictions, you're not asserting something you know to be a fact.
Excuse me, I'll be right back. Sweetheart. Go away. Go away. Go away. There's cat hair all over my face now. My face is now itchy. My nose is itchy.
You're asserting a belief that it's not impossible that the Bible has zero contradictions. And that's a very different claim. But again, very few people are willing or able to be self-critical about what they mean when they assert on the...
Again, watch Jimmy Akin. Jimmy Akin does a great job of this, of defending the no contradiction thing. Oh, just there's cat hair in my mouth. How is that even possible? Okay, let's go to the next video. So if this is the video that I want it to be, this video surprised me and shocked me.
YouTube, Patrick Coffin here, founder of the True North Movement. I guess Catholic apologist. I want to talk about apologetics.
So I'm writing a thing right now based on 1 Corinthians, and then I'm going to do another one. Ooh, dude, she even got stuff all over me. And then I'm going to do a thing on 2 Corinthians. But the gist of it is really simple. If you got to hyphenate what type of Christian you are, then you're not being simply a Christian. You're being something else. Your hyphen is technically separating you, schisming you from the one true church, because Christ is not divided. We'll have that discussion later on when we do that video.
In this live stream, I'd love to hear from you and get your very solicited comment. Know your story. One of my mentors in the faith is Ralph Martin, recently fired from the major seminary in Detroit, Sacred Heart Seminary.
I think that's very telling that a major schismatic and a major troublemaker during the Pope Francis pontificate is the mentor of Patrick Coffin. That might explain where everything kind of started off going wrong and went wrong from there.
For absurd reasons that he was never even told. But Ralph said, and used to teach seminarians, learn your story. Like, learn to share your elevator pitch. Religion being brought up with no context. Whether you're mentioning where purgatory...
I think it's interesting that more than a few people have talked about this since I brought it up initially. And they aren't doing it in response to me. They're doing it in response to, what's the guy's name? Alex? A Voice of Reason. They're trying to defend their position against bad apologetics and bad actors in the apologetic scene. In the meantime, they're doing some kind of, getaway for Catholics, for Catholic apologists, whatever.
It is in the Bible to someone on the golf course who's trying to sink a 4-foot putt, or around the Thanksgiving, that expresses that we're people of hope. Does your Christian faith show up on your face? In Greek, apologia, depends on the format of the word, but that's the cognate. It means reason or summary or defense. That's a fascinating pair of words to come up with right out of the gate to describe love, because I think a lot of Catholics get into a kind of a mechanical Mike attitude. They tick the boxes, they go to mass. You get into the business of miracle making or laying hands and healing and praying for. I call it the prayer of the just man. Father God, we just never quite understood that. I think anyone has ever been converted by a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram argument. No matter how true you think the answer is, eventually it breaks down, because
one of the videos, some of the research that I'm doing is documenting where all the grifting is happening. For instance, I saw a rosary for $79 as part of one of these ministries. So I'm just documenting all this stuff, and I'm gonna make a video on that sometime in the future. That's coming up. All right, let's. Do we want to do cute witch? I don't really think it fits with the vibe right now. Maybe next time I'll put all the gothy statue stuff back up too. We'll do that. We'll do her next time. This was interesting. This was a debate with Danny that didn't go off the rails.
The unanimous patristic interpretation of that is that is a direct reference to the divine nature. Yet he humbled himself. St. Paul says, every knee will bow to him.
So I'm not connecting to any claims about what...
I appreciate your honesty. I do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So it was hard because I listened to it audibly. I didn't watch it. I just listened to it while I was working out. It was hard telling the difference between him, these two voices, because one of them has kind of a lisp, and every once in a while the lisp would disappear. So it made it hard to tell who was talking. All right.
Well, here's an example that I had. So somebody the other day liked this tweet that I posted back in December of last year. I don't really remember posting this, but I'm pretty sure I did. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. Let's talk about this. So I wrote, evangelical apologists want you to think that deconstruction is the same thing as apostasy. Maybe so for some, but for countless others,
I'm still in the room,
deconstruction is
guys. I'm just going to turn on the
repudiation of
fan. It's getting a
idols
little warm.
and the move from milk to solid food. 1 Corinthians 3, 1-3. Ooh, this is the chef's kiss. This is good. Let's talk about this. So the first thing I would want to say is I've lived in the subculture of evangelical apologetics back to the mid 1980s when I was reading John Warwick Montgomery and Josh McDowell and I don't know, a smattering of others. Wasn't nearly as much in the mid 1980s as you can imagine as there is today. Every new atheist book that was published, like The God Delusion or God Is Not Great, you could have Christians writing their own books of. She wants you to believe that the late Rachel Held Evans and Peter Enns, who were both Catholic, they were both Anglican, confess the article, the 39 articles of the Anglican Church, follow the Book of Common Prayer.
Now, this is an
That they are not
hour-long video we're
Christians
about
at
to
all,
jump
but
into.
adherents to another religion. She
So we're
wants you
not
to believe
gonna.
that
We're definitely not gonna watch the whole thing right now. Then we're gonna try video games on each system just to see what it looks like with a dual system, how it works.
A follower of Jesus Christ.
Brethren, I exhort you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ to be in full agreement with one another and not permit any divisions to arise among
Is there
you.
an echo?
Be perfectly united in mind and purpose, for I have heard reports from Chloe's people, brethren, that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is that each of you is asserting, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, or I belong to Christ. Has Christ now been divided? Did Paul die for you on the cross? Was it in Paul's name that you were baptized? St. Paul is pretty sharp, isn't he? Has Christ now been divided? He's warning us against reducing the faith to personal preference or a kind of tribal loyalty. And I'm always drawn
I'm not hearing an
to
echo
these
when I
words
checked.
from St. Paul when I hear someone say, I just follow Jesus. We certainly...
So I'm literally working through this right now. I'm in Corinthians. That's not going to work, is it? Okay, let's see. I might need to get a different. Okay, it's working on the small cam. And the second cam is not really holding on the main cam. That just looks weird. It looks spooky. I like it.
agree in spirit, since, of course, following Jesus is central to the faith. That's what we're all supposed to be doing. However, that statement, I just follow Jesus, isn't supposed to be used to reject the church Jesus established, the church that he so clearly throughout scripture invests with his own authority, and it's not to be used in such a way that contradicts Jesus's heart for our unity. Following Jesus isn't a solo act. It's communal, it's sacramental, and it's apostolic.
What made you either reject or not return to the Catholic faith?
I think it contradicts the Bible. It goes against the Bible. And personally, I believe, just as the scripture says, that we should all be built up on the teachings of the apostles, prophets, and Jesus Christ. That Jesus is the chief cornerstone, that the apostles are the rest of the foundation. That we
Let's
have the
not worry
prophets
about
from the Old
that.
Testament. And just like a house is built.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough. All right, if you don't watch... Whew. If you don't watch Christ Defender, please go watch her. Donate to her Patreon and help her out. Okay, now let's try something a little different. So we're gonna do one video game and then a different video game. Okay. So let's do the video game first. Let's move this over here. That's going to be weird. Okay, hold on. How am I going to... This is going to have to go there. Okay. Let's turn on Steam. Okay, that's not good. Let's bring this guy back over here. Shrink him down. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's go to my library. What do you guys see next one? We're not gonna. We're definitely. Okay. I don't know. We're trying out different ways to play games here. Okay, that's not working. That is not working. Okay, let's try it from the other. Let's try it from the other way. Okay, so I need to fix that one. Let's see if it works from this other one. 1 second. Get the controller. There's that one. Bring this back up. Okay. Diablo. Stellar Blade or Diablo? Let's go. We're still working out some kinks here. I don't know how this is going to work, but what we could do is be playing a video game while doing something else. Or watching video in video or doing other stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff we can do here. I just haven't figured out what. By the way, I'm not good at this game at all. This is just to see how this works. I mean, this isn't too bad. Maybe do this while watching the news or something. What do you guys think? Oops. And I'm dead. All right. But that proves that it worked. Okay. Oops. I mean, not bad. Not bad. I think this could work. Okay, that's it for tonight, guys. That's basically all that I wanted to do. Hope you all have a good night. I know this wasn't as exhaustive or as deep as our usual stuff, but I just wanted to try out some things here. Again, let's go over real quick. Let's just finish off the video. I don't know which Hebrew book is the one I'm going to use while trying to learn Hebrew with. Maybe I'll buy a Kip Davis course or something if he has it. Okay. Anyway. That's